Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. Today's webinar is about the impact of income tax proceedings on businesses. So today we have with us Advocate Ajay Singh. Mr. Singh has completed his masters in constitutional law from Mumbai University, and he has been practicing for several years as a counsel in Supreme Court, High Court, as well as several appeals. So today, sir will be sharing about his knowledge in respect to this subject with us, several case laws and the latest happenings in this subject. So on to you, sir, now.
Thanks, Riverus Chamber of Tax Consultants and CA Club for giving me an opportunity to speak on this subject, prosecution, which quite long time the tax professional had never heard of. But suddenly there is a large number of cases have come up, and we are seeing that the income tax department is following up with tax defaulters behind these tax defaulters and evaders by filing this prosecution. Why it is so? Let's understand few of the provisions of income tax which deals with prosecution and why we have seen this large number of cases suddenly being filed. So, friends, we need to understand that law without a provision for punishment is like a lion without a teeth. So whenever we see that there is requirement of any compliance, especially of tax obligation, the Income Tax Act provides threefold compliance. One is through levy of interest. The second is through imposition of penalties. And the third one is through prosecutions. However, various reports have suggested that the department proceeds against an assessee for interest as well as for imposition of penalties. But proceeding for prosecutions are very few. And this gives the tax dodgers a profitable proposition to carry on the evading taxes over years, because the only risk that they run is that whenever they are caught, they will be paying the penalties and they will going scot free, and that too only in respect of the period for which they are caught. This gives that a general public normally loses confidence in administration, as there is one class of assessees who are honestly paying tax, doing the compliance, and there is another class who are always are let free by paying some minimum penalty and levy of some interest. So Vanchu committee report had suggested that this provision has to be used if the department wants proper tax compliance. Similarly, the Law Commission also in its reports in 1972 recommended that this prosecution provision has not been properly used by the tax department. The CBDT has failed to ensure compliance of these provisions. There is no monitoring of cases. Compounding of offences have not been used as an alternative mechanism for reducing litigation. And the Central Economic Intelligence Bureau, which is gathering the information, this information is not being supplied to various investigating agencies, and therefore the evaders are not brought into the tax net. And also there is that the pendency of these cases prior to 2015 were quite large. There were cases which were pending for more than around 1500 cases were pending for more than 15 years. And the number of cases that were filed also in prior to 2015 were very hardly, you could say that there were 2000 some cases which were filed. However, this number has gone to the different level after that. In fact, in financial year 17-18, we have seen that there were 2000 more than 2000 cases that were filed as in comparison to the 700 or 600 cases that were filed in the prior years, and this number has increased year after year. Some statistics also reveal that out of this 50% of the cases go for compounding. So so these are the reasons why the revenue has decided now after 2000, especially 2016 after demonetization, that the government want to come clean with a clean economy and want to give an opportunity to all the citizens that they declare their income after the IDS and they come clean as far as the tax compliance is concerned. And those who are not following in line, they have to be dealt with a stern hand. And therefore, these provisions under the Income Tax Act, which were quite dormant for a long time, have suddenly been become very active. So, before we proceed with this about the other issues relating to prosecution, one of the point that I have seen that many a times the assessees are just not aware what is the nature of these offences. So, one has to understand first that what is the nature of these offences under the Income Tax Act. So, I have prepared a chart which will give you the gist of the offence, what are there under the Income Tax Act. To start with, Section 275A is basically related to search action. In the chart, I have provided the number of years of imprisonment, whether the offence is cognizable or non-cognizable, bailable or not bailable, summons, whether the which head it is a summons case or warrant case, and which is trialable by which court, and whether compounding is provided under the latest guidelines issued by the CBDT that has been provided in the last column. So 275 deals with the search related to search proceedings. So if any person who is removing, parting with, or otherwise dealing with the books of accounts, documents, which is put under the restraint order during the course of the search, he will be liable for punishment, and this is an offense. Similarly, 275B, which provides that failure to afford necessary facility to the authorized officer for inspection of books. If you do not do so, you are again there is an offense which is committed. Similarly, 7276, fraudulently removing, concealing transfer of property or interest in the property with the intention to avoid tax recovery. So this is also an offense. Example, we can say that whenever there is a tax demand and we find that suggestions are made by assessees that can I transfer the property which is standing in my name in the name of any of the other relative, or I try to sell off the particular property to a third person just to avoid recovery of tax. If you do so, you will be liable for the offense under section 276. Similarly, Section 276 AD, which was effective till 1/4/1960, with effect from 1/4/1965, which is similarly in the case of a liquidator or receiver. In the case of a company, to appointed by the officer or parting away with the company's property in contravention of income tax provision. 276 AB was effective till 36/2002, which was in relation to Chapter 20C relating to the properties. Uh, 7276B. Now, this is a very important section because we file the tedious default cases. We find that the department is taking action under section 276B. So, failure to pay to credit of central government the tax deducted at source is liable for, is an offense and is liable for punishment for 3 months to 7 years, leviable with a fine. Now, the word used in the section is failure to pay. However, the department is also proceeding in the cases where there is a delay in payment also. And the department is citing a decision in the case of Madhumalan syntax to say that even in the cases of delay, this particular complaint can be filed and it is maintainable. I will tell you that in Mumbai and other cities, there has been conviction in many cases under this particular provision. So, a default of collecting the tax and not remitting to the government treasury has been taken seriously, and the largest number of cases what we find before the magistrate court is under this particular provision. Similarly, Section 276 BB, failure to pay and collect tax under the provision Section 206C, same type of offence, to Section 276C. Now, this 276C is willful attempt in any manner to evade any tax, penalty, or interest imposable under or under report his income under the Act. Now, this amount has become where the tax evaded exceeds 1 lakh is now 25 lakhs, and this is again improvement of 6 months to 7 years. And in any other case, the period is 3 months to 3 years. So, wherever there is a willful attempt in any manner to evade any tax, penalty, or interest, you will be liable as it will be an offense and you will be liable for the punishment as provided under the Act. Similarly, subsection 2 of the same section provides willful attempt in any manner to evade payment of tax. So you have to understand there is a two different clauses, sub clause 1 and 2, which works in a different field. Basically, one is in a case where a tax has been determined, and there is another case where the tax is payable by the assessee before determination of that amount. Similarly, there is a provision 276cc. Now, 276cc talks about failure to file a return of income under section 139(1) or in response to notice under 142(1), section 148 or 153A. The word used in this section is willful failure to file a return. Again, cases where there is delay in filing the return, also the department is prosecuting those assessees also subject to the monetary limits which has been provided, and one has to see the latest circular also which is issued on 9th September 2019, where the monetary limits and certain guidelines for prosecuting under section 276cc has been changed. So wherever there is a willful failure to file its return under the relevant provision, this is also an offence and a person will be triable for this. 276 triple C, failure to furnish the return of income in the search cases, which was in the earlier regime of block assessment, which was governed under 158 BC. 276D talks about willful failure to produce accounts, documents, one under 142, or gets its accounts audited also. So this is again a very important section. So if the notices have been issued during the course of assessment and the department wants you to produce certain books of accounts or certain document and you do not reply or you fail to produce those documents, the department can proceed against you under section 276D apart from levying of penalty also. Another section very important, section 277. Now this section also you need to understand making a false statement in verification or delivering a false account or statement and which the concerned person knows or believes to be false or does not believe to be true. So whenever you are filing your return, whenever you are giving any statement before the income tax department or furnishing any information to the department, you have to be very careful. If there is some false statement or there is some wrong some statement or accounts which has been submitted to the department and which is the department believes that it is false and you are aware about it, department will proceed against you under section 277. So while making a verification when you are filing a return of income, if you have given some wrong information in your return, the department can proceed against you under section 277. Similarly, while recording a statement also, if you make some wrong statement or you don't provide the statement about a particular information which is within your knowledge, the department can again proceed against you under 277. 277A, falsification of books of accounts or document. 278, abatement, or now again this is an important provision when we talk about the liability of professionals. One has to take into account section 278 because it is regarding abatement or inducing other person to make, deliver an account or statement or declaration relating to any taxable income which is false and which he either knows or believes to be false. So for any person who is assisting also in making such type of statement, accounts or any such declaration which ultimately leads to giving a false information and helping the any particular assessee to evade the taxes, penalty or interest, he may be liable under this particular provision. For subsequent second and subsequent offences also there is a provision section 278. So these are the major sections under which under the Income Tax Act under which offences have been listed out. Many a times I have seen that SSEs just say that I was not aware about these provision. I think so. It is the duty of professionals at least to list out these nature of offences to the clients so that at the later stage they cannot come up with such type of that I was not aware, because one has to understand that ignorance of law is not an excuse, and especially when you are before a criminal court these types of plea doesn't work because you are filing your returns, you are submitting the details after taking help of professionals, and you have to be there is a presumption that you are aware about the particular provision of law when you are making these statements or giving this information. So you have to be careful when you are filing your return, whenever you are giving any statement or any declaration or any verification with the income tax department. uh, you have seen in my chart there is a list which is giving about cognizable and non-cognizable offenses. Just I have very easily, if one can understand what is cognizable and non-cognizable, this chart explains you most of the offense which is listed under the income tax are non-cognizable and bailable. Now, bailable means it is a matter of right. When you go before a magistrate court, you will be entitled for a bail. When we talk about non-bailable, then it means that it is a discretion of the court whether to grant you bail or not grant it. That again depends upon the nature of offense and the particular assessee which appears before the court. Uh, so section 279 capital A specifies specifically though the offences listed in section 276E, 276C and the other sections where the punishment is more than 3 years, still these offences have been deemed to be cognizable offence. Similarly, section 2, if a penalty which has been imposed under section 278 or under section 271(1), and it has been reduced or it is waived under section 273A, where an assessee moves a waiver petition before the department, no offence under section 276C or section 277 will be tried. No person shall be punishable for any failure under section 276A, AB and 276B if he proves that there was a reasonable cause for such failure. This is in accordance with section 270A, 278AA. Similarly, for prosecution under various offences, under section 279, a sanction is required. The list of the officers or the authorities have been provided. Uh, Further, the offences which are listed are compoundable either before or after the proceedings have been started. However, there are certain offences where in the guidelines which has been issued by the department, they have treated those offences which are not compoundable, which is mentioned in the chart. One has to see the latest circular also, which is issued in the month of September, which provides the monitoring limits and guidelines for identifying and examining the cases for initiating prosecution. For compounding procedure also, the latest guidelines is of 14/6/2019. One can consider that before going for compounding. Uh, the definition of non-cognizable and cognizable offense have been provided under the CRPC. One can go through the same. Now we will move to the next provision, section 278E. Now, as I said, we need to understand that this is a criminal proceedings, and therefore the normal rule of evidence and the CRPC provisions will be applicable, and one has to be well versed with the Evidence Act as well as the CRPC. So normally one has in a normal criminal proceeding there is always a presumption that the prosecution has to prove its case. However, under the Income Tax Act, Section 278E, which talks about the mens rea, that means the culpable mental state, it is always it has been provided that the accused has to prove its innocence. The burden of proving absence of mens rea is upon the accused and not on the department. This is really a converse situation as compared to the other criminal trials. A question may be put up that whether this is a constitutional or not. So let me tell you, this particular provision has been tested. The constitutional validity of this provision has been tested and it has been upheld by the Supreme Court in the case of Jayalalitha and Shashi Enterprise, reported in 361 ITR 163. And the apex court has mentioned that the legislature can provide a particular provision to be in a particular manner, and the court shall always presume culpable mental state, and it is for the accused to prove that the contrary beyond a reasonable doubt. Also, a similar provision is also there under the GST regime also, where this type of presumption is there. So now the whole proceedings moves in a direction where an opportunity is given to the accused to prove that there was no mens rea while committing that particular act, which has been treated as an offense under the Income Tax Act. Obviously, this presumption is always rebuttable. As I said, there will be an opportunity given to the accused to prove its innocence. Section 278 is prospective, and therefore the offences which have been committed on or before 9/9/1986 with this particular provision will not be applicable, and it is applicable from prospective effect. As I said that there is a provision which talks about reasonable cause, section 278 double E. Now, certain provisions, this benefit has been given. For certain offences, this benefit has been given. So 276A, 276B, 276B, 276E, if any prosecution has been launched, AB, 276AB also. So wherever this prosecution is launched, the assessee has an opportunity to prove that this has been done due to a reasonable cause, and if this reasonable cause is being accepted, the assessee will be exempt from the prosecution and can prove his innocence. If he is able to satisfy the authorities also, probably the sanction will also not be issued. So I will come to that topic of sanction a bit later. But this opportunity is given to the assessee to prove if its innocence if there is a reasonable cause. he can this offence under these particular provision will not be committed. The courts have accepted certain reasonable cause where an accused where an assessee firm was filed its return belatedly due to the illness of its accountant. The courts have taken liberal view by saying that this forms a reasonable cause for the delay in filing the return of income, which is by a MP High Court reported in 320 ITR page 263. Similarly, there are other cases also where the courts have taken a liberal view depending upon each facts and circumstances. But these facts and circumstances have to be proved before the court. Recently, in the case of ITO versus Firoz Abdul Ghaffar Nadiadwala, where the prosecution was launched under Section 276B for late deposit of TDS. The plea of financial problem was taken by the assessee, incompetent staff, accountants, negligence. However, these pleas were rejected by the courts and said that this is not acceptable as the defense has failed to prove any of these circumstances which existed. So one has to keep in mind these are criminal proceedings. If you have taken a particular plea, you have to prove those beyond reasonable doubt before the court. Just by mentioning that there was a financial problem or taking a general plea will not help you. So you have to be very careful when you are taking such type of plea. Taking general plea will not help you out. Similarly, now let's come to the next procedure governing the prosecution by the department. Now, once the department has decided to proceed against a particular class of assessee, the department issues a show cause notice and calls upon the assessee to furnish its explanation. In the said show cause notice, basically the nature of offence is specified, and the assessee is also given an opportunity whether he wishes to compound that offence or not. As per the income tax department guidelines, the commissioner issues the show cause notice to the assessee, and if the commissioner is satisfied upon the reply of the assessee, the commissioner may decide to drop the proceedings. In case the explanation furnished by the assessee is not to the satisfaction of the commissioner may grant the sanction and the prosecution would be launched thereafter. Friends, this is a very important stage in prosecution because here, if the assessee is able to plead before the commissioner the correct circumstances under which this offence is being committed or the reasonable cause, and if the commissioner is satisfied, you will not be bothered from going to the magistrate court and proving your case through a criminal trial. So it is a very important stage. If you have been getting this opportunity, you should try to avail maximum out of it by providing the correct information, giving the correct explanation, and satisfying the department that this offence is not being really committed, or if it has been committed, it is due to certain reasonable cause. Also, this is a stage where the assessee can take the proper guidance and decide whether the assessee wants to proceed with the matter through a trial or can also decide that they want to buy peace with the department and therefore they can decide to go for compounding of the offences. As I had earlier said that the compounding can be done before institution of the proceedings or even thereafter. So ICC can take a call at this particular stage. We have to understand that the circular of September has relaxed the certain prosecution norms for offences where it has been mentioned that wherever there is underreported or evasion to the extent of less than 25 lakhs or below, prosecution can only be launched after the approval of the Collegium of Commissioner Chief Commissioners. So there is certain relaxation of provision subsequently by the department. So one has to put up its case before the department before the sanction has been granted. Now the stages before the court. So once the sanction has been granted by the prosecution, the department files a complaint before the magistrate court. The magistrate court takes the complaint into cognizance of that and issues a process. Once a process is issued, a summons is served on the assessee, and the assessee is required to appear before the magistrate court and take a bail. Once the bail has been granted by the court, uh, the assessee has to furnish the necessary bail bond and to the extent as specified by the court, and thereafter the trial will proceed. The first stage is examination of witness of the department. So the examination of the chief of the complainant takes place first. After the examination of the complainant is over, the assessee has an opportunity to cross before charge the same complainant. After the cross is done, there is the matter is kept for argument before charge. If the assessee is able to satisfy the court that the charges are not liable to be framed for the various reasons, and the charge and the accused should be discharged, the court may, upon hearing, may discharge the accused, or the court may decide that the charge should be framed. At this stage, the assessee is required to take a decision whether they want to challenge the whole process before the court by going for discharge, before the higher court for going for a discharge, or a court, depending upon facts of each case. The next round is where the charges are framed, where the assessee will be called upon to admit the guilt or deny it. Once the assessee denies it, the charge is framed, and thereafter the matter again proceeds for trial, where the cross is again granted to the accused. After the cross, the assessee has to leave the evidence and call his witness. Thereafter, the final stage of argument takes place, and thereafter the matter is completed by passing the order. If the assessee is convicted, he is entitled to get bail and he can file an appeal before the sessions court. This is the stages before the magistrate courts. At and as I said, prior to framing of the charge, the assessee has an opportunity to challenge the whole process before the court, either under 482 or in a revision, either for quashing of the complaint or for discharge of the accused, as the offence is not liable to be tried in the particular offence. But however, as I said, that if you are challenging the matter under 482, you have to make out a clear-cut case that the offence is not committed, and the whole exercise of going through a trial will be a futile exercise. It is a discretionary power of the court, and only if the court is satisfied, then only in cases the complaint is quashed by the court. So SSC has to decide this point after evaluating the whole evidence and the matter before trial. So sanction for launching prosecution, as I explained, that once the sanction has been granted under Section 279 by the commissioner, only thereafter a complaint is lodged by the officer of the department. The sanction is a very important document. The sanction order is a very important document because it is annexed along with the complaint. The SSC can challenge this sanction before the court if there is non-application of mind. Because the sanction is granted by the commissioner or the chief commissioner, the SSC is also entitled to cross these officers if required. The sanction is a very important from where the nature of offence has been committed and why the department wants to launch the prosecution can be spelled out, and therefore one has to go through it very minutely, and at time of trial it can throw many other points in favor of the accused as well as on the department to prove its case that yes, the prosecution can be launched. If the sanction is not proper or the offense is not made out, then one can challenge it. As I said, it can be challenged before the court. Granting of opportunity of being heard before a sanction is granted is not necessary. As a matter of procedure, the department is issuing this show cause notice, but it is not a matter of right that before giving a sanction under section 279 in each and every case, the department should call upon the assessee to be heard. However, if this opportunity is given, assessee should take the maximum benefit out of it by putting up its case before the commissioner. I have already explained you about this opportunity of hearing before the commissioner while granting the sanction. We will come to compounding of offense. Now, as I explained you that compounding can be done before or after the prosecution is launched. In case the assessee decides for compounding, one has to go through the compounding guidelines which has been provided by notification dated 14th June 2019. Earlier, this compounding application could be filed within a time limit from the date of launching of a prosecution before the court. However, subsequently, the CBDT by its circular dated 9th September 2019 has given as a one-time measure has extended this compounding in all the cases till 31st December 2019, and thereafter it has been further extended till 31st January 2020. So those cases where the compounding application had not been filed, SSEN had taken the benefit of this by filing a compounding application before the department. Now, compounding application is something where the SSE goes to the department, pays the compounding fees as specified in these circulars, and settle the matter out of the court. Once the matter is settled out of the court, the prosecution is withdrawn by the department. Once compounding is done, the trial stops, and department withdraws the complaint before the magistrate court. The compounding fees and the structure, how the compounding fees is payable, is provided in the circular. There are certain class of offences where compounding is not permissible, especially those where the offence have been tried for foreign assets. For in the case of search and seizures, 275A, these types of offences, the compounding is not provided. Cases where there are 2 or 3 multiple years, the compounding application again can be filed. Where the compounding application is filed at one time, it will be treated as a one application. However, in case where a subsequent offence has been committed, the compounding fees increases in those cases. Similarly, where the compounding is done after the launch of prosecution, the SSE has to pay certain additional amount as legal expenses. Compounding is not as a matter of right. One has to go through these circulars, fill up the necessary forms as prescribed, and provide the necessary details as per the latest circulars which has been issued in September. Wherever the offense, the new monetary limits has been provided, and it has been specified that the approval for launching of prosecution will be granted only by the CCI and the DGIT after the collegium sits. So now even the compounding application which is filed, the committee decides about the compounding. The commissioner and the chief commissioner decides about the same, and thereafter the compounding has been its process is completed. This compounding application once filed, it takes somewhere around 3 months to more than a year also at times to get the whole process completed. Once you file a compounding application, you should intimate to the magistrate that this application has been filed, and therefore the trial should not be proceeded. It is a discretion of the magistrate whether to stay the trial at that stage or to proceed further with the trial. Once the compounding is done, as I said, the completed, the cases will be withdrawn. In a case of a company, whenever prosecution is launched, the director as well as the principal officer of the company are also implicated in the complaint. So whenever a compounding application is filed in a case of a company, the compounding is also done for the directors and the principal officers also. There is some additional amount. Once the compounding is done by the company, a nominal additional amount is to be also paid by the directors or the principal officer of the company. Once all this is done, the compounding order is required to be passed, and once the order is produced before the court, the complaint can be withdrawn by the department. Now we will come to penalty proceedings and prosecution proceedings. There is always a question which is raised that can penalty proceeding and prosecution proceedings can go hand to hand. To this, one needs to understand that depends upon the nature of offense which has been committed. For example, let's take a offense which is committed under section 276 CC, where a penalty has been levied. In such type of cases, the latest circular provides that till the proceedings are not completed and the imposition of penalty is not confirmed by the income tax tribunal, the prosecution should not be launched. Once the proceeding is completed by the income tax tribunal, thereafter the prosecution can be launched. For this, one can refer to the latest circular number 24 of 2019, dated 9/9/2019. So in the cases of 276C, prosecution should be launched only after the imposition of penalty there is confirmed by the income tax tribunal. However, prior to this, the courts have taken a view that there is no bar for the department to launch a prosecution proceeding even during the pendency of the appeal against levy of penalty. So, however, this new circular changed the whole stand of the department now, and department has to follow this particular circular. So, till the confirmation of the penalty by the income tax appellate tribunal, the prosecution proceeding should not be launched. However, in the cases where a penalty has been levied and the assessee has decided not to further challenge that penalty, in such cases, the prosecution proceeding can be launched immediately. The next question which comes to our mind is whether a prosecution can be initiated before completion of an assessment or when the matter is pending in appeal. Now, again, completion of an assessment, determination of your tax liability during which your appeal is pending either before CIT appeals or before the income tax appellate tribunal. The courts have taken a view that appeal when it is pending at least before the CIT appeal, the department should wait and should not go for launching the prosecution. Though there is no direct bar under the Income Tax Act where the department cannot proceed against the particular assessee. However, the courts have taken a view where the matter, ultimately the findings of the appellate authority will have a direct bearing on the particular issue. The court should wait till the completion of the appellate proceedings, as the order of the tribunal or the order of the CIT appeal will be directly binding on the result of the assessment, and that will have a direct implication on the prosecution matter. So, therefore, simultaneously launching a prosecution against an assessee is not correct. However, under various other circumstances, the courts have also taken a contrary view on this point. So one needs to understand it depends upon the nature of offense uh, and how the matter is being pending at which stage. So at least the matter till is pending before the income tax appellate tribunal, which is the last fact finding authority. According to me, the department should not proceed for prosecution. Only thereafter the matter they can should launch the prosecution after the at least the final fact finding authority has decided the position of the assessment. However, there are certain decisions also where the appeals have been admitted by the High Court. In such cases, also the assessee has sought stay from the High Court from the matters which has already prosecutions have been launched or is about to be launched, and the courts have given stay in those matters. So one needs to consider those cases also, which are in the case of Suresh Kumar and Company, as well as in the case of Deepak Fertilizers of Bombay High Court, where this stay has been granted. Similarly, findings, as I explained, findings of appellate tribunal is directly binding on the matter, as it decides about the final tax liability of an assessee, or even in the case of a penalty, the confirmation of the penalty is done from the tribunal. The circular provides that thereafter only the department should launch the prosecution. So, according to me, the findings of the tribunal is binding on the magistrate court, and one should wait, the department should wait till the proceedings are completed before the tribunal, as it will have a direct bearing on the particular issue. We will come to now the impact of companies. As I said, that prosecution is something which is never liked by any assessees, and till now most of the income tax assessees have never seen a prosecution being launched in the income tax matter prior to this last few years. Now, if you will see the impact of prosecution being launched on a company, let's take a case where a TDS default has been committed, which according to many professionals as well as SSE is a technical default, because ultimately the company or the firm pays the necessary amount along with the interest, or maybe a late payment, but this is deposited with the department. However, department takes a different view of the matter, because according to the department, once you fail to deposit the amount within a particular time as provided under the act, the default is committed and you are liable for prosecution. The result of this prosecution is that the company is prosecuted. The principal officer of the company is also prosecuted. The directors of the company are implicated in this matter. The principal officer of the company is also liable for being prosecuted. So, in accordance with Section 278 capital B, all these persons will be implicated in the complaint filed by the income tax department. These individual person, these directors, will have to appear before the magistrate court once the summons are issued, and they have to take a regular bail from the court. Now, one has to understand that once a director is being granted a bail, there are certain restrictions on his movement when he is traveling abroad, because it is an unwritten rule that once your bail has been granted, if you are traveling abroad, you need to seek the permission from the court. The other implications also comes that when a director is being prosecuted, there are various declarations which are required to be filed when you are seeking a loan, when your audit under the company law takes place. You do have to specify those declarations whether you have been prosecuted or charged for any particular offense or not. So repercussions on individual directors are also there, because ultimately, if the conviction takes place and it is held that the company has committed the offense, the particular director may also be liable for convictions, and they may be also be imprisoned ultimately if the company is found guilty of a particular offense. So one has to be very careful. Recently, we have seen that there was a decision of Bombay High Court where an individual assessee had filed a petition before the Bombay High Court in the case of Ram Prakash Vishwanath Shroff, reported in 259 Taxman, page 385, wherein basically he had contended before the High Court that the Form 16 has not been issued by his employer in time, and due to which he has not got the tax credit. In such a matter, the court had taken a strict view and had suggested the income tax department that they should invoke provision of 405 uh, IPC, which is a non-cognizable offense against the company. uh, Considering the same decision, issue came up that whether the independent directors can also be prosecuted. And there were many cases where department had initiated the prosecution against the even the independent director. Cases where proper representations were made and explained that the independent directors were not dealing with the day-to-day affairs of the company, and therefore they are not liable under Section 278B. The prosecutions were not launched against them. However, we find a classic case. In the case of uh, Eckhard Garber, where the department had launched a prosecution. He was independent director and a foreign national also, and the court, the magistrate court, has also issued the process in his case. He challenged the order before the Sessions Court, and the Sessions Court, in a criminal revision application number 267 of 2019, dated 16 December 2019, had held that under Section 278B, person the prosecution can be launched against a person who is in charge or responsible for the conduct of the business of a company, and an independent director cannot be made liable for this, who is not in charge or dealing with the day-to-day affairs of a company. So the point needs to be understood that the department will launch the prosecution against the directors. In the case of an independent director, once they explain what is their position in accordance with Section 278 capital B, they are not liable to be prosecuted. Similar is a provision in the case of a firm. In a case of a firm, all the partners are liable. In case there is a sleeping partner, the deed of partnership and the other actions of the sleeping partner will throw light whether they were liable for day-to-day affairs of the company or not. In few cases, where in one of the cases, in the case of Sujata Venkateshwaram, reported in 408 ITR 545, a plea was taken by one of the MDs of the company, stating that she was a lady director, and though she was named as a director, the other affairs were looked after only by the other principal officer and director and not by her. The court rejected the plea and said that she has signed to the profit and loss account and the balance sheet for the relevant year, also the return of income, and therefore the department was justified in naming her as a principal officer, and she cannot the proceeding cannot be quashed against her, and she will have to go through the trial and prove her innocence. So the courts have taken such type of cognizance in the case of a director or the persons who are responsible for day-to-day affairs of the company. But however, in the case of an independent director or the director or who is not involved into the day-to-day affairs, he can be exonerated from such type of offences. Same is the situation in the case of an HUF also. Uh, we may see I have already explained the impact on directors, companies director, and partnership firm. We come to the provision of abatement. One has to be very careful, especially the professionals, because there is a provision where the for abatement also a prosecution can be launched. So under section 278, any person who is instigating on there is a conspiracy or there is any intentional aid which is provided for commission of any offense as declared under the Income Tax Act, uh, the person will be liable under section 278. So one has to be very careful while advising its clients or while dealing its clients. If there is some proof which the department gets where it can show that it was being assisted in making a false declaration or submitting any accounts, the professionals can also be liable for the particular offense. One needs to keep in mind a similar provision is also there under the GST law, where the professionals or any other third person who is involved in the matter will also be liable. So this was the liability of professionals. Just now I have discussed with it. Uh, um, we need to also understand the new scheme which has been introduced in the last budget, which is Vivad Se Vishwas scheme. Now, Vivad Se Vishwas scheme is a new scheme provided by the government to reduce litigation. So the whole objective of this particular scheme is to reduce litigation. The government has seen that there is a very large amount of direct tax areas which has been locked into this litigation, and in order to give relief to various class of assessees and to remove this disputed tax arrears, the government has come out with this new scheme, Vivad Se Vishwas scheme. If you can recollect, there was in 1990 there was a similar scheme called Kar Vivad Samadhan, which was also launched and which was a very successful scheme. However, this under this new scheme, Vivad Se Vishwas, there is a provision wherein certain class of SSCs have been excluded from this scheme. As we are discussing the present provision relating to prosecution, so the section 9 sub clause 2 provides that wherever and for any assessment year in respect of which prosecution has been instituted on or before the date of filing of this declaration, this particular class of assessee has been excluded from this particular scheme. Similarly, in a case where a search proceeding has been initiated, those class of assessees has been kept outside of the purview of this particular scheme. Various representations have been made by various bodies and industrial committees before the CBDT and before the finance minister to relook into these aspects and other aspects also in this scheme. It has been given to understand that a new modified scheme will be introduced shortly, and one has to take into an account if this particular provision is relaxed. The SSC can consider this alternative mechanism of settling the dispute with the income tax department. Um, so with this, I have tried to run through the important issues and important provisions relating to prosecution under the Income Tax Act. Uh, There is also a provision under this powers being given to settlement commission. If an assessee goes before a settlement commission for settling its matter, the power of settlement commission is to grant immunity under section 245H to a particular assessee, depending upon the tax, depending upon his particular case before the particular settlement commission. There is no time limit prescribed under the Act for launching of prosecution. So, a prosecution can be launched by any time by the income tax department, but one has to see that it should be launched within reasonable time. With this, friends, thank you once again for being with me through this web session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. This has been a really informative session. We got to know a lot about the prosecution proceedings in income tax. So, as you can see that there are a lot of changes that is happening in income tax domain. So, keeping that in mind, Riverus, which is a legal tech company, has launched a new service called Riverus Telescope. This is a one of a kind service provided by Riverus. So, as you can see on the screen, Riverus Telescope curates issue based research service that provides ready to go income tax research. This is on basis of industries, issues, and parties. So, it's very easy to use. One can just request any issue or industry or party that they want to follow and send in that request to the Riverus team, following which the data would be collated as seen on the screen, and you can get detailed information about the issue you want to follow. You will get the detailed issue, the legislation that applies to it, the top cases that relates to that issue, and the main USP about the service is that all your issues will keep on getting updated on a daily basis, and you will get notification about the same.